Hello, YouTube! How you guys doing? We're back with another topic. Did the wonderfully innocent, cartoony look of this whole thing bring you in here? Are you thinking you're gonna have a wonderful and fantastic time with some fictional media and all sorts of colorful, cartoony characters? Yes, that's exactly what's gonna happen. This is Pendog Creative Library. I have had it in my sights for a little while. It is a website-based project about little-known mascots and cartoon characters mixed in with some bigger names from a fictional universe. And it's very much along the line of, hey, I've been collecting all this media about this mysterious fictional thing, and strange things are happening. Stop me if you've heard that one before, but have you heard it like this? You let me know in the comments what you think. We're gonna go through it. Come on over. I realized as I was doing that, it was a touch of Joe Bob there. Sure, we've heard it before. No, sure, we've seen it before, but have we seen it in a website format with red all over the place? Well, yes, but have we seen it with, commercial mascots? I don't think we have. Full transparency, because it is needed. Yes, of course it's going to be a Nightmine Live episode. 99% of the time, or at least maybe, I don't know, 95% of the time, if we're doing a Nightmine topic, I'm going to go ahead and make that a VOD. I want everybody to enjoy the adventure. That's the usual protocol. But, full disclosure, I have gone through this by myself, because I needed to. I needed to know what the deal was, and I need to know how to best guide us through here. The upside of that is I know exactly how to do this without us getting too lost in the weeds, and I know ahead of time exactly what it is I need to highlight and what it is that I want to critique. It was a necessary kind of thing for me to just like poke around here and see, okay, what's going on here before we take a look, because I need a little bit of information ahead of time. But this is the Pendog Creative Library. Welcome to our library. Welcome to the Pendog Creative Library, a digital archive dedicated to the preservation and documentation of creative endeavors. Here on the PCL, you will find cartoons, puppets, dolls, artwork, music, and more. The website strives to educate interested readers about the history behind these artifacts without their impact and stories may be imparted to the general public. Consider this website a digital museum. We are split into different wings, pages, that can be found through the menu. The Creative Archives, resting place of broadcast and print media. Here you may view magazine covers, animation production materials, newspaper articles, cartoon advertisements, and more. This collection is the pride and joy of the Pendog Creative Project. Creative History, information regarding involved artists, places, studios, and more. Anything that has had part in PCL's creative history will be discussed here. You should check out my favorite article on Barbara Massey. I'm very proud of that article. Notable Characters, where you can read about cartoons such as Maisie the Mutt or learn the history behind obscure mascots like Telly Electric. Sail through oceans of information on puppet superstar Dorothy Doo, or sweeten up your trivia with Beatrice B.E. B. It's like, I could see people in that universe getting confused. Like the 52-year-old man with his newspaper sitting there looking at the advertisers like, do I call her Beatrice B or Beatrice B.E.? I don't, she's a B. I don't know that. The Imaginarium. Have you ever had an imaginary friend? Do you have drawings old or new of what they look like to you? Send them over to be eternalized in the Imaginarium, where you can also see other submissions. The Update page. Please consider our articles to be living documents. From time to time, they will update as we confirm and revise information. When this happens, you can check the Updates page to see where info has been added, redacted, or changed. The page also is for updates on the future of the website, monthly activities, and answering questions submitted by you. This page is admittedly more personal and about my experiences with the art I maintain and archive. The About page. Learn about myself and those who have helped me to put this site together. This page also contains important information about how we work and what to be aware of while reading or exploring the pages of the digital library. So, the first thing that I do want to point out when it comes to my feelings about this website is that this kind of collection definitely needed a sorting algorithm, a setup that really works for going all around and making sure that you're picking up everything that you can pick up, because it is that kind of thing. It's like if you're hunting through for story and information, you want to be able to find things quickly. And there's a lot here. Like you can see immediately, there's a lot here. You gotta be able to sort it. I managed to get through everything just by using the tag system. Thank you for the tag system. Your categorization system really worked out here. There are things I noticed that did slip through the cracks. However, by and large, this has been excellent for picking things up, because I have found things through the tag system I was not able to find in other means. The category works too for the tagging. This is very good. This is a very good way to do things. Glad you did that. You can find a bunch of different ways to go about this. You can take it by looking at the media at a glance, or you can take it by looking at specific characters. The way that I did this, creative history, and this too, just in case you're missing articles, you have them here. And you have links in other pages to these articles, which is great because you can just kind of branch out what you need at a glance as you're going through something and discovering, like I did. This is how I did it. I went through the the character index. Notable characters. Welcome to the character index. Learn about historically famous characters such as beloved Maisie the Mutt, or delve into the obscure history of Miss Hecate, the world's most mysterious and hard to document cartoon. These pages are made to honor the characters that breathe life into our work and make it worthwhile. Everyone remembers Maisie the Mutt. However, characters like Telelectric and Hecate are very unknown in our modern era. Hopefully this website will change that, and this page will help to introduce them to you as new friends. Right. So this is the best way to have done this, in my eyes. Maybe you could have set it up as a grid menu as well, but again, I have to speak to the categorization, because if you're going to run a project like this, you really need to make it user-friendly for people to find what they need and have it be intuitive. And this is intuitive. Like having it as the carousel option, it just works. Really does. So I was able to go through here and just crack things open from the bio. That's how I would do it. I would go to the character, I'd crack open the bio, like I'm going to do for Maisie the Mutt here. And then from here, I would pick up the links from like Ivan and read that story after reading the main article. And then I would check out the related media using Maisie's tag over in Creative Archives. So from here, it's like, let's say I need to get everything Maisie. I want to finish out Maisie. Let's 100% Maisie, right? So from here, I've got the character article. I see a link to the creator, so we can learn about the creator. And then from the Creative Archives, there's Maisie the Mutt. And now we've got everything Maisie here, which is perfect. That was the system that I used. Your categorization system works. All right. Now, of course, me being me, I'm used to making searches for things and just digging around knowing, okay, where can I look to find anything that I need at a moment's notice with the tools that they have provided me? Common person might not be as keen on that, but in terms of what I think works for it, and the kind of person that I am, and the kind of person that an average ARG person or unfiction person is, it works for us. Very good. Because you're going to have a lot of media as you keep on going. Like you're going to have a shitload of stuff, and I know it. So this is the best way to stay ahead of it. You fixed the problem ahead of time. Always try to do that when you have interactive projects. Maisie the Mutt. The Miracle Hound, the Marvelous Mutt. Maisie M. Mutt is perhaps the most famous character archived on our database. A storied character with a love for the creepy, the ghostly, and the ghoulish. Her stories have ranged from playful follies to slapstick nightmares. Making her debut in the 30s, Maisie was a quick hit with audiences and soon would blaze a trail of success for her studio, Liquid Laugh Pictures. She has appeared in multiple cartoon spin-offs, series, movies, and has, of course, launched the creation of Maisieland theme park. As a character, Maisie made her first appearance in the episode Dizzy Divots as a background character. Head artist Ivan Hoth liked her design so much that he reused her design again in Maybelle Braybells as a co-protagonist to Hopple the Hound. However, as time went on, Maisie would overshadow Hobble and become the central face of Liquid Laugh Pictures. Abandoned in a graveyard. Abandoned as a pup, he was raised by Muriel. It was Courage the Cowardly Dog's 25th anniversary just this week. John R. Dilworth actually did a live stream Q&A just the other day, so check that out later if you're interested. Abandoned in a graveyard, adopted by a living haunted house, raised by hundreds of ghosts. Maisie the Mutt is probably the most morbid cartoon character hosted on this website, although such elements were not uncommon in older cartoons. However, Maisie's fictional backstory was definitely more fleshed out than characters like Webby Webster, Mr. Leeds, or Hobble the Hound. Maisie's association with the supernatural has always been strong, playing a gravedigger in her original background appearance. While most characters of the time were running away from monsters and being menaced by trumpet-playing ghosts, Maisie could often be found tagging along for the ride and being great pals with similarly ghoulish characters. Maisie is a bit of an anomaly in how her early cartoons portrayed her, since interchangeable roles were not uncommon in early cartoons. However, Maisie would just as often play the villain as she would the hero during her original run. Most famously in the first episode with her as the protagonist Red Riding Gloves, Maisie played a devil-like figure selling a down-on-their-luck musician her pair of magic gloves for a terrible price. In another episode, White Whittling Shears, Maisie the Mutt would menace a local farmer by shearing his sheep until being caught and banished to the dark forest. However, throughout her run, Maisie has ultimately been a force for good, antagonizing the haughty and mighty of her cartoon world, and being a sympathizer to any creep, goblin, or otherwise outcast creature. Over time, the association that Maisie the Mutt had with rituals, the occult, and the forces of the underworld would be phased out by her owners, instead being replaced with the element of her magic hat providing her powers. I wonder why. Boo! Indeed, Maisie's image has changed significantly over the years, not only in visual design but in surroundings and tone as well. Throughout it all, however, Maisie has retained the same traits: free-spiritedness, gravitation towards outsiders, and being prone to making any situation worse. Although an immensely popular character, the details of Maisie the Mutt's history are difficult to parse. As a character with so much fame, she has equally as many varying accounts from individuals and organizations. We are dedicated to helping you understand the true Maisie, the Maisie of all sides and angles. Okay, so, you know what? Hold on, we'll do these clips first, okay?
Well, ain't that a coinky doink? Maisie the Miracle Mutt at your service.
Wow, that's somehow familiar. I wonder. It is a great theme. Yeah, I dig the theme. Wow, Squeaks, I sure hope the voice of Maisie isn't a wanted felon either. Alright, it did sound like someone was walking off. That was interesting. So, when it comes to this, alright, writing for this kind of thing, there's gonna be a lot of literal writing that you do, right? Because most of it does have to be text. You've got a lot of pieces that you can show visually. Sometimes you have audio. Very occasionally you can have video. But you're going to be doing a lot of writing. There is writing in the sense of what is in the mind, okay? And what is understood about what must be conveyed. And then there's the literal writing, the composition of words, sentences, paragraphs, what have you. When it comes to conceptual writing and the elements that need to be portrayed and the impact of that, having gone through basically literally all this website, you've got that. Because there have been moments, like when I have switched over to reading about the history of Ivan Hoth and Liquid Laugh Pictures, that I understood exactly what you were creating and how it kept expanding. The greatest strength of your project that I can give you when it comes to writing is telling the human side of these stories, especially because I can tell they were influenced by the history. You must be a bit of a history buff on actual legacy of cartoons and mascots and the use of illustrations for these kinds of things. For instance, if I said the term termite terrorist to you, you would actually probably know exactly what I mean. If I say the name Leon Schlesinger, you'd probably freak out with me about how impactful that name is. I imagine that you have definitely done your research. You have looked into the history and you understand that across the whole band of media and creating the whole arc from the early 1900s straight up through the 80s, that there have been a plethora of different stories about creators, what kind of creator they were, how strong in character they were, how weak in character they were, great things that happened to them, and times that they got absolutely ripped off and stepped on by corporations. And you can see that all throughout this work. I applaud you on that. Because some other creator would probably take this kind of concept and just keep it to the idea of the mascots and the characters without bringing in the human side when the opportunity is so very much there. Because what you have here is very much, it is an alternate reality. Like, there is so much establishment of history in there. There's a world built. It's not a welcome home case where nobody knows what the hell this thing is and where it came from, so we don't have information. Here, we've got a lot of information, and you're sharing that. And that is one of your strengths. Because of the nature of how you built this, you can play to that side, and it creates a humanity and a two-side of the coin situation that really works out for you. But really, what I kept enjoying so much was the humanity of the stories behind these creators. Because they're all so different too. Like, not everybody's story goes the same. You have similarities in certain cases. And you have the kind of thing that makes me raise my eyebrow at what specifically happens to quite a few of them that is mentioned. But then you have cases like Dorothy Dew's author, which, you know what, we'll get into that. But first, to illustrate this point to you guys, let me go through the history of Ivan Hoth. Squeak says, I still remember first being sent this site and being so taken aback by the sheer quality of this. It's so well done. It is. I have notes, but this is strong. It's just that this is really, it only just opened in October, like with its first full footing. Like, this is brand new. We're here on day one. All right. Cartoonist, illustrator, animator, and businessman, Ivan Hoth is one of the most well-known individuals in the history of animation. Born into a family of doctors, Ivan began his artistic career from a young age drawing his brother's pets, a spider and a goat. He would regularly read the newspapers his father turned over to him, poring over the comic strips inside and taking inspiration from them in his artwork. It was during those days, according to Ivan, that his desire to be a cartoonist began. However, his father had different plans for young Ivan and pushed him to pursue the family practice, sending him off to medical school in hopes that, according to Ivan, it would dissuade his son from the life of an artist. His father's wishes were granted for a short while, with Ivan attending medical school for 2 years. However, Ivan was self-admittedly a poor student and a persistent troublemaker for the staff of the institution. He would regularly draw during class and struggle to focus on lessons, often getting distracted and failing to understand the teacher's instructions. At the conclusion of his second year, Ivan dropped out of medical school and took on a variety of work wherever he could, while continuing to draw in his free time. During this time, Ivan would submit multiple comic strips to the papers. Although young and having no prior experience, the quality of his work impressed the head of the Kelbridge Chronicle. In the early days of Ivan Hoth's employment, he shadowed the prominent artist Louis Pardane, a well-regarded cartoonist. The two would quickly become friends, and in their third year of acquaintance becoming roommates, sharing an apartment from which they created their own independent comics in secret. The two's friendship could not be overstated. As an incredibly private and introverted individual, Ivan was incredibly shy and struggled to communicate with others, typically preferring to hunker down in his office space to draw his days away. It was Lucius's kindness and mentorship that drew him out of his shell, and the two would hold very long and rousing conversations about the arts and their futures. Most of what we can learn today about Ivan's life is the result of Lucius's recollections. Do you notice how you're already kind of watching this play out in your mind? You're understanding this on almost like a biopic level as a film? This is very much telling the story of the human behind the creation, and it's really working. From these recollections, we can learn things such as Ivan's fascination with the morbid and macabre, which is something that has been largely forgotten and went unmentioned in official Liquid Laugh books. He had an intense love for ghost stories, tall tales, and folklore, things which influenced his comics and the early cartoons he produced at Liquid Laugh. While working at Kelbridge Chronicle, Ivan began experimenting with animation. As someone who had never known of animation until moving to the city, he found himself immediately swept up in the possibilities of cartoon motion. It was through his partnership with Louis Pardane that Liquid Laugh Pictures would eventually be founded. With both friends leaving behind Kelbridge Chronicle and pulling together with friends met along their artistic careers to make this dream a reality. Liquid Laugh struggled during the early days of its life, for as a fledgling animation studio it had to compete against other studios of the time. Their earliest character, Hobble the Hound, was not a particularly popular character, and the works of their studio were only shown in a few small theaters that did not bring in enough revenue for the studio to sustain itself. Ivan and Louis would regularly work late into the night, long after everyone had left the studio, brainstorming ideas to keep the company afloat and desperately trying to create something that would propel their studio out of its precarious situation. In interviews, Ivan stated these years to be the most exciting yet horrific years of his life. His nights sleepless with the stress of his dream crumbling before it got off the ground. This recollection has been confirmed by accounts from former workers, stating that during the early days of the studio, they would often witness Ivan descending into an almost manic state, pacing, tearing at his hair, and teetering on the edge of collapsing in the studio from sheer exhaustion. Louis would confide privately in others his worries that the two of them had gotten in over their heads. The future of everyone involved in the studio was uncertain, the clock was ticking, and Hobble the Hound cartoons were being released in declining quality. This would all change when Ivan Hoth created Maisie the Marvelous Mutt. This character, originally designed as a minor character, was extremely popular with audiences. She sprung the studio into stardom, and Ivan would eventually throw away Hobble the Hound entirely in favor of Maisie. Ivan would work on every single production of Liquid Laugh, sometimes as a storyboard artist and sometimes helping to paint cells. He liked to be outside his office whenever possible, preferring to be amongst his co-workers and contributing what he could to their productions. The studio would produce several more animated features from the building he and Louis had rented, but as more and more people were brought aboard, it became clear to both founders that the studio would need to be relocated in order to accommodate for the increased workforce. Relocating to Chicago, Illinois, Ivan would cut the ribbon to his new studio to much fanfare. It was a golden new era for Liquid Laugh Pictures. A dark cloud shadowed over this area in the form of Ivan's declining health due to undisclosed causes. He hid this from his employees, however, and it would not become public knowledge until his death. Despite his ever-increasing fame, Ivan remained a very reserved and private individual. Louis would typically handle speaking to the press in Ivan's place. It made Ivan an oddity amongst other studio heads, and he was noted as never showing any interest in starting a family or marrying. Most of his free time would be spent with Louis Pardane, with the two going fishing during the warmer seasons and snowshoeing, skating during the winter. Although his studio would eventually stray away from spooky-natured cartoons, Ivan continued to show his love of the macabre in other ways, such as using much of his personal income to discreetly fund horror movies and smaller science fiction projects, something which was not known until after his death. Ivan refused to be credited in these productions. Yes, they were roommates. I'm not saying that's the case, but there's always a little, perspective now. Perspective as a homo myself. It's just a little, that's a lot of male bonding time there. He simply seemed to love the horror genre and decided to give back to it in any way he could. In the last years of his life, Ivan would withdraw further from public view, only being visited by Louis and longtime co-workers. It is still not known what afflicted Ivan and likely will never be known. Ivan would pass away at his residence with Louis at his side. So make of that what you will. Obviously, they did love each other. It just, You can be bros and love each other. You can be brothers in that way. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's more modernly admitted than that. But here's exactly what I mean, right? We just got this entire human history, this whole walkthrough behind the creator of Maisie the Mutt and his creative partner at the time, all right? That established his whole studio. And we really got taken on a journey here, more so than we did with the history of Maisie. And that's a really good thing, all right? And when it comes to the classic touches of unfiction and storytelling and greater mystery, of course, this whole thing speaks to us, right? Macabre interest, occult interest, strange illness, died of causes undisclosed. Makes you wonder, right? Because we know what we're dealing with here. Scribbly Noodle says, missed opportunity to call it the Updog Creative Library. Welcome in, Z. That's Ivan. And I really do like this case here of the writing behind this. And that's just Ivan and Maisie. So then we've got this, the page for Maisie. And we have the poster here, Maisie the Mutt in red riding gloves. We've got the image here. I think personally, when it comes to Ivan, you're gonna have a hell of a time trying to get proper images for any creators, right? That's gonna be a difficult feat here. What you could do, just to give it more of that lively touch, is insert things like development sketches, things that we can kind of contribute to the creator more in their journey with the character that is on the site along the way. Or anything else that we can wrap in, you know? Because when it comes to the actual believability of the site, this is one of the difficult things that you're going to have with this. All right? And I do want to note this is, yes, it is an amateur and hobbyist venture, but they would still try to present as much professional touches as they could, understanding how this is supposed to look, feel, and flow. When it comes to the actual literal constructive writing, there have been several moments going through this that I've noticed it's like, you could have done a little bit of rewriting here. You could have cleaned this up a bit, double-checked your language, given it that real final polish. And with the sheer enormity of stuff that you've got here, in order to do that, you need to give yourself the air and the space to just mentally get away from it so that you've got fresh eyes when you come back and you can be ruthless as an editor and chop it up as if it's not even yours. Because that's what this kind of work needs in order to do the editing and get a second draft of anything. But riding that mix between amateur and professionalism would really work for you here. It's just there are certain spots where it's like, oh, I notice it's leaning a little bit too much in one way. If that could have been revisited and typed up a little bit better. And Friendly Frankenstein's got a point here. Also, we're trawling public domain imagery for images to turn into photos of real people. Add damage. Water damage, fading could be fun. There you go. There's a way around it. And we'll talk about that too when it comes to the actual presentation of media in here. But that's what I really wanted to jump on first. We had to start with Maisie. We absolutely had to. And now when it comes to the matter of how much media is on the site and how this was even created, there's something that I want to shout out above all else. All right? And I need you guys to pay attention to this, because this has been partially the theme of the year, and I want it to be understood going forward. I've been talking about this in the moments that I have been able to bring it forward, but this is one of the best possible instances I can do this. Okay? In About Us for the site, everything in here is in character, but then at the very bottom, project info, you get to pull up the curtain. And you get smacked in the face with a bunch of trigger warnings, which, for people like us, that's just a list of ingredients on a menu while we're sitting in the restaurant. Oh, loss of control. I love that with unreality and bees. Oh, it's been a while since I've tasted bees, but gore, gotta have the gore. You gotta have the gore like you gotta have French fries, baby. But that's not what the point is. The point is, thank you to all who made this site possible. Look at the size of the site when it comes to contributions and personnel. Look at that credits list for this project. Something I really want to salute Pendog Creative Library on is the demonstration of something that I have said for quite a while. And I really got to start talking about it again with Welcome Home. And Friendly Frankenstein will definitely be able to attest to this. But this really nails in the point so visually for us in the form of a new project. When you guys come together for something, you can make incredible happen. Okay? Whether it's lending your voice, your art, your writing ability, your coding ability, to just get involved and give yourself a start and help somebody else get their start and help anybody else attached get their start. Because when you get into an endeavor like this and you help make it possible, you are helping an entire team. This is what unity means. This is joining forces collectively to make something real. We have a lot of projects in nonfiction where it is one person or one person with a few people who help. There is never anything wrong with that. It's incredibly admirable. But when I got into covering this field, it was all projects where it was multiple people. Just little groups of people doing their best to tell the story. And it's been a long time since I've seen that again. This is one of the biggest credits lists that I've ever seen for a project. And Frankenstein is right. Legitimately, one of the strongest skill sets a person can have in art is being able to manage, gather, and do right by a team. That's the other half of it. Because I have been in, not been past tense, I am in actively a managing position for a team, for a creative endeavor. In AstraLine, I also have to work as part of a team sometimes, when all of us need to come to the table and be a happy family. It's not easy. This is a task. To make this happen and actually get it into a presentable form and put it out there and make it work is a task. It is an achievement, and I salute you. Congratulations on getting this done alone in its opening phase. Holy crap, that took a lot. But this is so much of what I mean. You do not have to do this all alone. If you have a skill set and you want to be involved, there's somebody out there who could really use you. Believe it. And when it comes to AstraLine, I'll tell you straight out. Mary says it all the time. That was his origin story. He was a writer. He was an avid writer of his own, as he'd put it, his own silly little ideas. He couldn't actually draw. So he bugged some artists until somebody said yes. And then they built things together, and it was a little snowball, and then it just kept on being pushed down the hill until it was about snowman base size. And then he kept pushing it, and then it really rolled. Because that's how this works. You do not have to be an island. You can get help. And you can help other people, and you can make amazing things happen. This is one of the biggest teams I've ever seen for a project. Congratulations. Moving on to the other stuff. Creative Archives. We were already on. That's yeah. So I gotta think about how I want to do this, because there are important points that I want to hit for demonstration purposes. And there's the obvious thing of like, okay, but where's the blood, Nick? Show us the corpse. Where's my corpse? So I'll bring you the corpses, all right? I'll show you where the blood trail has started. Admittedly, as this project is just beginning, there's not a lot of Scarlet to find yet. They're starting, but I'll show you where the blood trail is picking up. But first, I want to continue painting in the scene. So we've seen the deal with Maisie and Ivan. If you go to the site, you'll be able to find all of the media related to Maisie, which is very cool. Now, who else do I want to show you? You know what? Let's show you a very natural contrast to the case of Ivan. Actually, let's go to Dorothy Dew, America's favorite sailor. Dorothy Dew is a very interesting character who got his start in award-winning literature, ascended to puppet stardom, then featured in a landmark animated feature. Of all our characters, besides perhaps Maisie the Mutt, he has gone the farthest across mediums. Created by Barbara Massey as the protagonist of her series of novels, The Deep Blue, Dorothy began life as a sailor in a world completely submerged by water, and while traveling to different islands, he would explore the wonders and treachery of land and sea, always on the move, never returning to the same location. These stories would hop from place to place and delight both the adults and children of America with their tales of danger and fantasy. In these novels, Dorothy Dew was characterized by restlessness and a desire to do good in the world, hence his original full name, Dorothy Do Good. He was also notable for his calmness in terrifying, hopeless situations and taking the ship under control, so to speak. The Dorothy Dew series would run for several novels before Barbara was approached with the proposition of adapting Dorothy Dew's adventures into a televised series. Although proposed to be an animated TV show, Barbara Mast had different ideas, as well as an unusual amount of control over the project. After contacting friends working at Silverstein Puppetry Theater, she gathered together what would be known as the Deep Blue team. There is a link here, interestingly enough, to YouTube. I don't think the copy of the tape that they ripped that from is normal. Yeah, I mean it's very cool, but you can tell that one is a little bit what do? Very nice animation though. Very nice. And of course, we have a voice clip.
Greetings. I am Dorothy Dew, America's favorite sailor.
There's Dorothy. And also there's Dorothy. So a word, since I was just seeing it, and we're looking at kind of these depictions here, and there was some chatter about it in chat a moment ago, as I was reading off the beginning of Dorothy's stuff. Across the website, there is a lot of media from a lot of different artists. And for certain elements of the storytelling, for certain characters and the context, it is extremely fitting and extremely beneficial. Something I do have to note, and this is tough when you do an open call, because you gotta work with who's there. A tough part is that for so many elements of what you have, it works perfectly. We buy it. We totally buy it for a lot of this. For instance, Maze of the Mutt. I totally buy that poster. And I buy that image. And what else? There was something here that I really loved. Where's the... That's so strange. There was something, not the Zocho. No, it was a black and white animation clip. I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing it for something that's on the social media, because that is something I do want to say that I'm not terribly keen on. There are pieces presented on the social media accounts related to this project that are not on the site. And that makes no sense to me. Why you would not have that present on the site, which is the main archive. Like, there are elements I can see of what you're doing with the social media for an aspect that is coming up, and it would make sense for it not to be on the actual archive site for that, because it's a teaser or it's a different aspect of the storytelling. But for something like what I'm thinking of, why is it not here? In any case, all right, I can't show you that one. But the song remains the same. There are certain aspects I've gone through in taking a look at the media presented as allegedly from that time for this character, period accurate. And some of it is absolutely selling the case. 100% great pick. Good job. Others, I can very much tell that it is digital, and it's an artist who cannot truly replicate that style, and it works more as fan art that would have really worked well for inclusion in a fan art section of the site, and you would have done a little bit of a better job segmenting what is fan art, recognizing its great work, but it's not serving the actual presentation and the context that I'm giving. Because here's the thing, all right? And you've got to acknowledge this. As kind as you are, you've got to acknowledge this when you're making this kind of project. When you have period accurate, contextually believable, well-composed artistic work, you have set the standard. You set the bar. That's the guideline that you have to follow for the rest of the project. So when it comes to a character where you're going to see stuff where you're trying to sell it as this was an ad from the 1960s for this character, and it really is not cutting the bar because I can see the pixelation, you have to say, okay, I'm going to put this in a fan art section because I appreciate that contribution. And it would be great to have it in order to help sell the story and have it be part of the project. But I have eyes and I understand it's not going to fly for this section and I can't sell it. I can't convince people with this. You've got to know that there's a difference between, you're not being unkind by calling a spade a spade. There is a way to work it in without doing a disservice to the standard that you have set. Because we've had those cases. I've had those cases taking a look at the site. You gotta be willing to go ahead and segment those out correctly. Because Dorothy Do, everything I'm seeing right here, is selling it. I believe this. Some other characters, for stuff I've seen, I did not believe it. The Dorothy Do Show premiered in the late 50s and was an intensely popular show with children and families. Each episode would begin with a foreword by Barbara Massey, who would appear at the end to discuss the episode's events with Dorothy Do. The puppet for Dorothy was a marvel of puppet crafting, puppeteering, and voice acting. It was commissioned and built over the course of 3 long months, and Dorothy immediately claimed all who saw his face. Charmed. Immediately claimed. Imagine. The show ran for 7 seasons, during which Dorothy would continue his pattern of visiting different places, meeting new people, and fighting various foes. The show was so popular that the Dorothy Do fan club and newsletter was created around season 3, through which excited fans could send letters to Dorothy and get monthly newsletters, gadgets, and more. Popularity of the show convinced Barbara to release a smaller series of books, each about one of the recurring Dorothy Do characters. The entire series could be said to be the staple of any American childhood of the time due to its all-encompassing scope and popularity. There was even a short run of Dorothy Do comics that ran for about 30 issues. After season 6, the animation studio Copperbell Productions approached Barbara with proposals to create an animated movie about Dorothy Do and his adventures through a brand new ocean. After many years, the movie would be released to the public and was so well received and successful that it was nominated for an Annie Award. Dorothy would make 2 more animated appearances in a Halloween special and New Year's celebration special. At the beginning of season 7, Barbara Massey announced the end of the Dorothy Do show. After many years of working with Dorothy, she felt that she had told all the stories she had to tell with the character and laid him to rest before retiring. Despite this, Dorothy has remained an icon of cartoon and puppet history to this day, with several well-regarded fan clubs springing up to replace the original Dorothy Do fan club. So, great story behind this character, right? Smash hit success, just like Maisie the Mutt. You all remember how Ivan's story went, right? I want you to keep that storytelling in mind as we turn things over to Barbara, because this is what I really want to highlight, and I'm gonna make damn sure we get one more example in here before I start bringing you over to the corpses, all right? You found the Maisie the Mutt animation I was talking about. Good. Yeah, see, it exists. The black and white one. Barbara Massey. One of the most prolific writers and artists in American history, Barbara Massey is famous for her book series The Deep Blue, The Dorothy Do Show, and The Dorothy Do Movie. From her childhood, Barbara had always loved writing, having written short stories to entertain her family and friends. However, she would only take writing seriously as a pursuit after reading the works of R.W. Winfield, prolific author of the Meadow Valley series, and being awestruck by his stories of peril and fantasy filled with fantastical critters. We have R.W. Winfield in here and his creations. We're going to go there next. For much of her early years, Barbara would pore over the works of Winfield and list him as the inspiration for her foray into fantasy literature. However, later in her life, Barbara would disavow him. Much of the early literature created by Barbara is unavailable to the public. However, Barbara has gone on record stating that she began her writing career by writing stories for a variety of beauty magazines underneath a pen name. It was here that Barbara honed her skills and learned what it took to hook a reader for a story. She described the work she did during this time as being mostly fantasy fiction, which audiences seemed to enjoy as she kept getting work. Eventually, however, Barbara got bored of writing what she described as very similar stories with the same beats and characters. She had never forgotten her childhood readings of Winfield's work and desired to write a novel of her own that paid homage to the types of stories written by Winfield. At this point in time, Barbara was also a very well-traveled woman, and it was during these travels that she had formed a special fixation on the ocean, sailors, and tales of oceanfarers. These 2 influences meshed together to inspire her idea for The Deep Blue. Barbara would travel frequently while writing The Deep Blue, often taking the train, and it was during her excursions into the city that she would begin a friendship with Patty Greenbale and Matthew Pollock, 2 puppeteers that would become very critical figures later on in Barbara's life. Side note, sometimes you meet people along the road of your own journey, and you have no idea how much they're going to factor into your story years down the line. But if you make a good friendship of a creative individual, keep it. You have no idea what good could happen. Honestly. These stories happen all the time. We retell them for a reason. Barbara would write home frequently to her family during this time, and when she was home, she would write frequently to the people she met during her travels. In the early 50s, Barbara would release the first of many novels in the Deep Blue series with the help of publishing company Axel House, who saw potential in her work. It had a small limited run but very quickly sold out, and before long the book was being sold all across the United States, with demands for a sequel from both publishers and audiences. A demand that Barbara very happily complied with. There would be several more books in the series before Barbara was approached by Echo Broadcasting with a proposal of adapting her series for television. The deal they arranged with her was very unusual in the amount of creative control it gave her. Although proposed to be an animated series at first, Barbara pushed back against the idea and instead contacted her friends Patty Greenbell and Matthew Pollack, now lead puppeteers at Silverstein Stitching, a puppet company. Through them, she spoke with head of the company Boris Hasser, and a deal was struck to put together a team that would eventually become known as the Deep Blue Team. The Deep Blue Team would go on to begin production for Dorothy Doo and the Deep Blue, a puppet show that would go on to rock the world. From the beginning, Barbara had a concrete idea of how she wanted the TV show to be executed. A series of loosely connected stories revolving around Dorothy's adventures through the Deep Blue Sea. And with the help of expert puppeteers, experienced musicians, amazing artists, and charismatic actors, the show began its first season at the tail end of the 50s. Barbara helped to assist in puppeteering and some voice work for the show, but mainly sat at the helm of writing for the story with a very strict expectation that she was the only one allowed to write dialogue for Dorothy. It should be noted that this is common with creators. Dorothy had a very intense connection with Dorothy Doo, and this was reflected in the show as Dorothy having a fireside chat with Barbara at the end of each episode, discussing what he had learned with her. Over time, Barbara did gain a talent for puppeteering and would occasionally assist in the operation of the Dorothy puppet. Barbara was a nobly interesting person to work with, as attested by multiple accounts from over the years. She had a habit of getting what she wanted through cleverness and stubbornness in equal measure, and had no time for pencil pushers or corporate meddling. When she had an issue with the people upstairs, she would march up to their office and return soon after with nothing to say on the matter except, "We came to an agreement." Besides this, Barbara was a very warm and comforting personality to be around according to friends, and someone who always took the wheel of the ship and knew where to steer it. An enthusiastic creator who would make time to speak to anybody who wanted to talk about art. Oh, and aside, Vendrith has the URL, a Blue Sky link to the animation talked about earlier. Yeah! So that's the music. Alright, this is what I was talking about. Why was I misremembering this as an animation? I mean, technically it's an animation, but I don't know. The Dorothy Doo Show would go on for 3 more seasons before having to go on a brief hiatus. In the early 60s, Barbara got embroiled in public controversy with accusations being made towards her of being a communist. Notably, this occurred during the tail end of the Red Scare, an event that permanently affected the livelihoods of several artists and individuals. Barbara had been very publicly outspoken against the blacklisting of creatives, and as such found herself in the crossfire. Despite the personal and professional danger such beliefs put her in, she stood her ground all the way to the end of the craze, at which point she was offered an apology from the soon-to-be disbanded committee. It was an apology Barbara did not publicly accept, going so far as to mock it on television. Good for her. The Dorothy Doo Show would continue to air soon after, with future seasons being ordered by the network. And in the meantime, Barbara had been taking the time to write short stories inspired by the show. These stories focused on the places and characters puppet Dorothy had met, and were meant to enhance the audience's appreciation of Dorothy's world. She also established the Dorothy Doo Fan Club fan letter program, and went before Congress with Dorothy to advocate for improved education. After season 6 of the show, Barbara would be approached by Copperbell Productions with the offer of an animated Dorothy Doo movie. Historically, this was a highly well-regarded movie, and the production would take its own page to describe. Barbara was recorded as having enjoyed the film, yet also stated that it had been a very draining experience for her, which perhaps may be why she decided that season 7 of the Dorothy Doo Show would be the end of the saga. After concluding the Dorothy Doo Show, Barbara would move to North Carolina to be close to the beach of her childhood. She kept in regular touch with friends, family, and other creatives, but notably lessened her communication with fans over the course of her retirement. Years later, Barbara would pass away peacefully surrounded by family in her home. So, similar to elements of Ivan Hoth's story, but certainly a different personality. Was not afraid of being out in public. Was not afraid of making sure that she got her way and had creative control. And she ended it on a high. Barbara is the template. Okay? When it comes to creative endeavors and being an artist, Barbara is the template. Learn from Barbara's example. So R.W. Winfield, who inspired Barbara, you're going to want to take note of this story by contrast, okay? Okay, so R.W. Winfield, creator of Millie Moonbeam and Wistful Winnie. R.W. Winfield is most well known for his book, Hearth of Meadow Valley, and its following series of sequel novels. So now, let's go ahead and find those two. We're not going to have time to go over it, but my favorite character in the archives is Telelectric. I will not expand upon that yet. We do not have time. Millie Moonbeam. The wonder child of prolific American cartoonist and author R.W. Winfield, Millie Moonbeam is most famous for her adventures and perils as the protagonist of Winfield's 1920s book, Hearth of Meadow Valley. In this book, Millie, a small firefly, falls out of her garden one morning and into the fields of Meadow Valley, an all-encompassing world of green flowers and vines. Filled with bugs, pixies, and fearsome critters, she must find the dying hearth of Meadow Valley and reignite it with her light. In these books, Millie was characterized as a sympathetic but fairly clueless individual, prone to making situations worse with her involvement. This served as a way to introduce audiences to her world as she encountered new people and places and had them explained to her. Millie had a propensity for fire, as she was the only character in her world that could wield it. And although eager to share her gift with others, sometimes she got carried away, especially around her more wooden friends. The story was a great hit with audiences, and Winfield would go on to further writing stories featuring Millie Moonbeam, but she would go on to be slightly overshadowed by Winfield's other character, Wistful Winnie. Regardless, Millie was a very important character in Winfield's life as he had no children or surviving family to speak of. When interviewed following the release of his third novel, he was noted as saying, "Millie, in all her wonder and luminous charm, is my only daughter." So we can actually pick up the rest of this tale from the biography, but here's Wistful Winnie for a moment. We'll go ahead and speak about Wistful Winnie real quick. The Imp of Meadow Valley and most popular creation of author R.W. Winfield. Wistful Winnie has had an interesting life that began when he first appeared in literature through Winfield's 1920s classic, Hearth of Meadow Valley. In this novel, Winnie played the role of a minor villain, being an unhelpful and dangerous pixie encountered by protagonist Millie Moonbeam. She captured Millie on her adventures and sang a rhyme about fleecing, flensing, and eating the unfortunate bug before being tricked by Millie into jumping into her own boiling pot. Oddly enough, this behavior did not deter children from adoring Winnie. Perhaps due to her whimsical, illustrated appearance, children would write numerous letters begging Winfield to write a sequel to the first novel, and in their letters they would mention the character of Winnie and wanting to see more of her schemes and songs. After many letters and many knocks on his door, Winfield relented and wrote a sequel to the first book that was released about 2 years after his first novel. Notice a contrast there, okay? R.W. Winfield wrote the first novel, didn't want to write anything more beyond that, was convinced to do that by several letters asking about it. Barbara, inspired by Winfield, leapt at the chance to write a second novel. There's a contrast right there. The book was a return to the world of Meadow Valley in which large rolling machines have descended upon the garden. On her adventure to reach the central machine, Millie Moonbeam was this time aided by a remorseful but still pernicious Wistful Winnie, much to the delight of children everywhere. Should be noted that although more popular than Millie Moonbeam, R.W. Winfield was noted as never liking Winnie that much. In fact, near the end of his life, he was recorded as saying he hated the character, although this could have been influenced by losing his ownership of Millie around the same time. And he would call her an awful little beast that for some reason beastly children seem to love. So that's a good point to swing it back over to the biography. Black Moon Rose 13 says, it's kind of like how the writer of Wizard of Oz didn't plan a sequel till he got like lots of letters from more. Or the writer of My Fair Lady getting harassed for a better ending. Yes, I actually can pick up the influences for a lot of these stories when it comes to what actually happened, whether it be a cartoonist or an early writer. A lot of this is familiar to me. So R.W. Winfield, newspaper artist, illustrator, author, Winfield was a man of many talents and was possessed by a restlessness to explore new mediums. Born into a fairly wealthy family from a young age, Winfield had always been fascinated with the arts. However, due to his lineage, such pursuits were actively discouraged by his parents, who wished for the young Winfield to follow in his father's footsteps. But the medical field was, in Winfield's words, a stifling profession, so at the time of his 18th birthday, Winfield ran away from home to elope with Irene Amber, a much older woman from a rivaling family. Notice again a similarity. Dad wants me to be a doctor. Fuck that. We have two cases now of, no, I don't want to be a doctor, I want to draw. I want to be an artist. It would only be many years later, when his father was on his deathbed, that Winfield would return home and reconcile with the family left behind. As for the marriage between Amber and Winfield, the relationship started off amicably, and for some time the two were happy in one another's presence. However, in the third year of their arrangement, the two would get into terrible bouts, and during the following October, the two would divorce, leaving Winfield on his own. Which would have been very hard back in the mid-1900s. Divorce was not common then. It was kind of a stain on your reputation if you were divorced. During this time, Winfield worked as a hot presser while attempting to hone his artistry skills with several rejected submissions to the paper companies in his area. Winfield, a stubborn and unyielding man, continued to improve upon his craft for the next several years before finally being offered a job by a sympathetic friend. His friend, Mitch Breyer, head of the Lewinter Tribune, hired Winfield to illustrate short stories in the papers. For a time, Winfield, though a very morose-appearing man, was notably happy with his work at the Lewinter. His work was fairly well received by audiences, especially his illustrations for the short fantasy stories in the paper. His work was characterized by astonishingly detailed creatures and landscapes, with an amazing use of hatching and inkwork. This arrangement between Mitch and Winfield was for a time amicable. However, the cracks of their friendship would start to show when Winfield began to pursue other avenues of creative expression by making his own cartoons and attractions on the side. Again, a contrast and a similarity. Ivan hooked up with his friend Lewis, right? Here, we have Winfield hooking up with Mitch. Except, Ivan Hoth and Lewis, they got along great. They got along famously. Over here, Winfield and Mitch could not carry it together. Now, when he was doing all of this work, Mitch claimed that this was in violation of his agreement with Lewinter, and a conflict of interest. In fear of losing his job, Winfield reluctantly dropped his external ventures, an event that caused Winfield to forever hold a grudge against Mitch. Tensions would come to a head when payments for Winfield's work at the Lewinter began to come in later and later, with his last payment from the company being several months late. Oh. For Winfield, this was the final straw, and he severed his relationship with Mitch Breyer and Lewinter Tribune. Despite being barred from external ventures while working at the Lewinter, Winfield had been privately working on several concepts, inspired by the stories he had illustrated during his career. You know what, I'm going to take an aside real quick, because this has been happening even today. If you are a creative person working for a company, check your contract for any clause about owning any work you make or any ideas that are presented at the company in any fashion, because some of them are real snake bastards who will claim ownership of your IP just because you made it while you were working there. Don't ever let them know if you have that kind of contract. If you are in a position to not sign that kind of contract, or tell them, get that clause out or I don't sign, get the clause out or you don't sign. Own your work. Do not let it be signed over to some asshole who will then own it just because they tricked you. This has happened for decades. It is a disgusting and evil tactic, and it still happens today. Don't ever let somebody else own your IP. Yeah, like none of your business said, you made this? Wrong, I made this. Just because, well, you were employed with us. Fuck that. Don't let it happen to you. Winfield had written the prototype for a novel called The Hearth of Meadow Valley, a book detailing the adventures of Millie Moonbeam, a small lightning bug. After several revisions and much fighting, Winfield managed to secure the assurance of Norwal Publishing in the distribution of his novel. Speaking from personal experience? No. Speaking from the understanding that the only reason any of us have the glorious trilogy of Austin Powers movies is because Michael Myers understood back in the day from his work at SNL and the Wayne's World movie that if he wanted to go on and make his own movies with his own ideas and characters, he could never introduce them or workshop them while being under Saturday Night Live because Lorne Michaels would own it. Yeah. Lorne Michaels would legally own anything the actors came up with while working at Saturday Night Live. So Mike Myers sat on that one until he was free. And that's why we have Austin Powers, because he was smart enough after learning from his experience with Wayne's World. By the way, Lorne Michaels absolutely dissed Elvira during her appearance on Saturday Night Live all night long. So, Lorne, sit on one. On behalf of Elvira and Mike Myers, sit on one, Lorne Michaels. After several revisions and much fighting, Winfield managed to secure the assurance of Norwal Publishing and the distribution of his novel. The novel was a hit with audiences, with Winfield receiving immense royalties and praise for his work. For a year, Winfield received letters from children expressing their wonderment at the adventures of Millie Moonbeam, as well as a desire for a sequel. In spite of their pleas, Winfield was fairly steadfast in his desire to move on to other projects. Winfield's mind would be changed upon receiving a letter from a little girl that rather bluntly implied him to be a one-hit wonder incapable of commitment. Charmed by her letter, Winfield began writing the sequel to his award-winning novel, and the following year released it to an eager audience. Spurred on by the success of his sequel, and because it was putting food on the table, Winfield would go on to release more books, most being small collections of stories from the world of Meadow Valley. Near the later years of his life, Winfield would enter communication with a company called Cersewheel Productions. They had approached him with the offer of adapting Hearth of Meadow Valley into a live-action movie. Ever since his childhood, Winfield had been fascinated by movies, his greatest dream being to have his work shown on the silver screen. With his fame and excitement clouding his judgment, Winfield signed on board and thus began a long and painful production that was perhaps doomed from the start. The movie was by all accounts a nightmare to work on. The conditions were notably horrible, with several actors and actresses passing out on the set due to the stress. Several props caught on fire, one of the actors was poisoned by aluminum dust, and several writers quit mid-production. Throughout it all, Winfield was reported as feeling helpless against the inadequacy and ignorance of Cersewheel, and feeling a sense of doom towards the chances of the film ever completing production. These fears were proven correct when, after several years of toiling, Cersewheel went bankrupt and production ceased. Sweet Clover says, "This reminds me a lot of the Wizard of Oz production." Yeah, and that's probably where it comes from. I actually thought a little bit about Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, the first film. Yes, that one, which released in January. Yep, Lemony Snicket, who was probably very restrained in talking about what happened and how he felt. These fears were proven correct when, after years of toiling, Cersewheel went bankrupt and production ceased. Defeated, bitter, and tired, Winfield would then be approached by Liquid Laugh Pictures. The company offered him the chance to make an animated short film featuring Millie Moonbeam, and in his desperation to see his work on the big screen, Winfield signed on board without realizing that by doing so, he was giving up ownership of Millie to Liquid Laugh. What was I just talking about, guys? The details of Millie's ownership would not be made explicit to Winfield until after the production and release of the film, a film he had been invited to watch the opening showing of. This was an event that drove Winfield to the darkest places of his life, and soon after Winfield was documented to have made an attempt on his own life. He would retire to his old countryside home and release one more book, featuring his other popular character, Wistful Winnie. This book, however, was not well received due to its dark nature, and today it's fairly unknown compared to his body of work. In the final years of his life, Winfield would pour his money into the construction of a library dedicated to the preservation of literature. It took 1.5 years to complete, and was named the Winfield Library. A month after its completion, Winfield would be found dead in the library, his cause of death being undetermined. So once again, we have an undetermined death, and a tie between Liquid Laugh and Winfield. JJ's Horror Show says, Nick, remember when he said Barbara was the template? Winfield is the warning. Abso-fucking-lutely. And Barbara knew Winfield's story. So what do you think helped make Barbara Barbara? She learned, man. She took a look at that and went, never me, man. Never me. No, fuck that. Never me. She was right. So we have had an example now of 3 different creators behind these characters. And we still have all of these characters here. Now, when it comes to Where Are the Bodies in this project, it's amazing, isn't it? How much we just explored and experienced and got entrenched in, and got to visualize and go through a journey on before even encountering the drops of blood. Kudos to you for that. There's still more characters. You can actually go through and have quite a bit of fun. But if you want to fast track the whole sniffing around for the bodies thing, you're going to want to go to 2 places. You're going to want to go to the very odd inclusion, Slishy Slasher, which you will trip and fall saying that name 100 times if you're not careful. My brain still wants to turn it into Sissy Slasher, because Slishy is just, it's Slishy Slash, yeah. Tongue twister. And Miss Hecate. But we're gonna go for the straight up on what we need here to illustrate the ooh factor with Miss Hecate. Hi friends, Penny M here. I felt that reading this article in conjunction with this page would be important to understanding our work on Hecate. Hecate Cigarettes. The most obscure character on our website, Miss Hecate, is a cartoon who we are working to learn more about the history of. Although she appears in various pieces of art, we have been hard-pressed to find details about her creation, what studio was responsible for her animations, and so on. For a character with such a large body of work, she is frustratingly difficult to learn about, and she is one of the reasons we founded the Pendog Creative Library, to figure out just what the story is behind this mysterious character. Accounts of her carry on well into the 30s, but, at this time, artistic depictions go no earlier than the 50s. Even then, this information was hard to find. Much work was done just for the scraps of a story we are determined to put together. We are not certain whether Hecate started out as a cartoon character for entertainment or for advertising. This is the earliest surviving artistic rendition of Miss Hecate, and as can be seen here, it is horribly defaced. From here, artistic depictions of her cannot be found until the 50s. This archive item is dedicated to Ikak. We miss you so much. So, the trail really begins here. If you're looking for the blood, here's where you start. I love this piece too. This is a beautiful illustration. Hey guys, why is this art moving? You can see it in certain spots. It's bubbling. Oh, there it goes. Our most perplexing and hard to document character. If this is the first time you've heard about Miss Hecate, you are in the majority. For this character has survived only through written literature, defaced artifacts, and vague historical accounts. It is unknown what exactly Hecate looked like in her original incarnation. Copies of her design in the 50s have been recovered, but earlier than that the trail goes cold with very damaged artwork. That gives us little indication of her original cartoon appearance. brought to our attention by an associate. This character is one of the core reasons for which we've made the Pendog Creative Library. The winding trail of accounts and messy documentation are just as interesting as the cartoons Hecate herself featured in. From what we can glean from history books, Hecate was a female cartoon existing well before Maisie the Mutt, with features running well into the first years of the cartoon dog's run. We know from written descriptions that she had horns, red gloves, a worm-like appearance, and a scarlet smile. In songs documented from her old cartoons, she was described as having a personality like corpse flesh, with the skin tone to boot. However, after this point, accounts regarding her become very hard to find. There are clues indicating a very storied history, and as we find them and verify the information, we will excitedly relay our findings to you. At the moment, we have only a single very poorly maintained voice line of Hecate. Sure. We feel that regardless of the terrible condition, it has been retrieved and you are entitled to a listen. You can't. So, if we go to the Creative Archives, sort by tag, we have one questioning Hecate, and then we have Miss Hecate. Unnamed work, Milford Sykes. The paintings of Milford Sykes were defined by strong usage of shapes, bodies which faded out into hazy brushstrokes, and characters with pinched, narrowed eyes. Milford Sykes began drawing in his 30s and quickly found himself under the employ of various companies and independent commissioners. He stated about his own work that he rejected concrete settings in place. Rather, he preferred to focus on character, shapes, and movement, which often led to paintings, which the characters were placed in an unidentifiable space. Found amongst his unpublished works upon his death, this piece appears to depict Miss Hecate. It is unknown for whom this piece was commissioned or why it was never released upon completion. This archive item is dedicated to Ikak. We miss you so much. Once again. So let me show you guys, because we're getting close here, one more thing related to this. Just to give you a bit more of the trail. This is definitely not the end of everything that I have to say about this project, but I understand that we're running out of time before this collab. So, you know. There is the Hecate storybook, which is wonderfully done. I really like this one. Hecate in chat. What? Oh no! I'm gonna fucking die. But there's a very nice storybook here. I love this style. This feels very authentic. What you do want, though, when it comes to this, is this strange bit of print media. Submitted by an anonymous donor, claiming it to be relevant to our current research. It appears to be an abstracted rendition of Miss Hecate, with strikingly rendered eyes projecting rays of light. Or are they wings? That is up to you to interpret. Regardless, it makes her a very impactful visual. It is here that I would like to take a moment to thank and remember our archive member and close friend Ikak, host of the Founder Finders Lost Media Hunters, a dedicated and kind individual who helped us recover a great deal of our current archive items related to Miss Hecate. Ikak sadly passed away 1 year ago today, and his memory will always walk along the website. He was a massive fan of Miss Hecate the moment he discovered her, and made it his life's mission to uncover her original cartoons and design with a persistence and thoroughness that rivaled his peers. You know, that's how we met. I was looking for more information on Hecate and he reached out to me, enthused that someone shared his interest in the lost character. We had similar backgrounds. We talked for hours about our interests and how important it was to preserve media because you never know what will happen and... I'm sorry. I know it's inappropriate to be putting this in an article. I know I should be saving this for the blog and updates page. But it's just really hard. It's been a whole year, but it's so unfair, you know? He was a friend, and he was taken away so soon. That's why I'm dedicated to restoring and bringing to light Miss Hecate's history for his sake. I think that would make him happy to know his work led to his goal, even if he wasn't there to reach the finish line. So the story behind that is in the updates. Yeah, you're going to want to go to updates. Start at the bottom, site launch. And then you'll be able to just keep on clicking left. That will tell you the whole story, okay? And that'll bring you up to the current day. But what you want to do here is notice you can click on this. And bingo! Ain't that what we've been looking for? Isn't that what we always hope for when it comes to stuff like this? There you go. There's something fucked up. Is the website fucked up? Then we're here. You got a secretive research website? The website is fucked up? People are dead? Okay, sign me up. Yes, it is one big mess. It is pulsating. And this page is actually a little bit broken because there is an audio track related to this. It should be playing, I think. The coding kind of prevents it.
No matter how blurry, how hazy, how much fog obscures the eyes. How will you aid? Not now, not soon, not yet, but in time, I will make my claim. Close your eyes and think of red. Think of the red. Wait for my call.
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of faces. If you Control A this and then dump it in a Word doc, you will get everything unscrambled, including the actual image, precisely as it is unblurred. So that was cool. I hadn't uncovered that. What I do have, there are other secret pages. I don't have them all ready at the jump, but I do have two that I found, and I don't know how the hell you access them normally, but I've got them. The other stuff, it's kind of easy to get, and it's through Slishy Slasher's page. But there is this that I did show off a touch earlier by accident. It's called Come Here. There are 6 senses that a human might experience in their life. For 6 is a spectacular and fabled number for all manner of trickery and spectrums. Sight, to see something brilliant. Smell, to heighten your appreciation. Taste, to make life truly living. Touch, to master the world around you. Hear, to make all rhyme. And thought, to dwindle and idle, and lead one down a different path than the previous 5 senses. A beautiful side of the honeycomb, surely. For it can lead you silly little things to things like me. Deep in the factory darkness your eyes will fail you, for the gloom will spread like tar across them. The sense of smell is rendered inert. The choking smoke and dust and sweet smells are simply too much. Taste? Well, I suppose I needn't say it wouldn't do you much good anyways. Touch? You may fumble for a while across winding halls, tracing concrete walls. But in fruitless effort. And hearing? I suppose it might help to keep yourself steady, but all certainty fades with time. But thought, it will lead you to me. You will wander and wonder with steps entwined, my melody calling you close with heavenly rhyme. That's right. Come closer and rest your head. That's right. Let your shoulders ease. Come to me. Come closer now. Closer. Closer. That's right. Come closer. Are you ready? Brace yourselves. Come here. That's it. Don't worry. There's nothing here that absolutely knocks you on your ass. But Great pretension. Very clever. Very clever pretension work. And then there's this unexpected piece. Deepest Clearing. It's called The Barrens.
Oh, are you? You shouldn't be over here, friend. It's not safe. Although, if you are like me, that must mean you are destined to wander. A boon for me, a curse for you. Even if the thrill of discovery clouds your mind. There's danger for those who wander so deeply. Things less friendly than I lurk here. That desire to know is overpowering. I can't stop you. I can't protect you, but I can give you warning. So heed my words. Be careful, you careless wanderer. Be careful, my friend, of the red lipstick trail. Be careful of her, my friend. Be careful. Careful.
You can find evidence of a red lipstick trail somewhere on the website in a piece of media. But you really got to look around. You do have to be an explorer here. Now, we do have to wrap this up because the collab's going to kick off and I got to tell the guys that I'm around, I'm awake, I'm aware. But overall, here you go. It's pendogcreativelibrary.org. I do have other things I would want to say about this, but I don't think that this is going to be the end of it for us because this is just beginning. What I will leave off on for a note, very specifically, is that, all right, two things. First, go through the sites, and if you have the time, I know it's a big task, but there are some cases of overwriting here on some of your articles. I would go through, I would tighten things up, I would try and bring things up a little bit tighter when it comes to the writing standard. Do mark my note earlier about when it comes to media for depictions of certain things. Truly be the correct judge of character here when it comes to does it actually fit or does it just work better as fan art. You have to be discerning about this. You have set a standard. All right? Do your best to keep to it. Because when we can start seeing the difference between period accuracy and what seems like fan art of somebody trying to mimic a style, our suspension of disbelief breaks. It's harder to stay on track. And when it comes to the mysterious interactive elements, keep on being creative. There are some cases here where I have no idea where the door was for certain secrets that you've hidden here. If you want to know how I found them, hit me up. I'll tell you so that you can go ahead and seal that up if possible. Otherwise, double check your access points on those and see, are they a little too clever? Or are they just clever enough? Can you find them well enough? And keep on building up whatever you're building. Your interactivity and your secret hunting has to be rewarding. Learn from your inspirations, but also ask the people who are really intelligent on your team, who know how to do certain things, how to make amazing things that we have not witnessed in other projects. All right? You've got an amazing thing here. It's really shaping up. You've got massive potential here. Massive potential to do really cool stuff. I wish we had time to get to everything else right now. I really do. I wish that we had another 2 hours. Right now, we do not. But I know you're not going to stop. You just kicked this off. We're going to be back in the future. So, my salute to you and your whole team. You got a hell of an effort here. It's shaping up real good. Now, just continue the ride and double down. Thank you so much with Kinder Eyes and everybody who has worked on this. Yeah, we're going to be back in the future, all right? We're going to be back in the future. For now, though, I got to get back to the main office and get ready for this collab.